morning. Call to order the August 21st, 2018 Saline County Board of Commission meeting. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Shadwick?
Here.
Commissioner Sparks?
Here.
Commissioner Vidrickson?
Here.
Commissioner Weiss?
Here.
Commissioner White?
Here.
I ask that you please stand and join me in a flag salute followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll now move to the public forum where citizens may speak on county government, usually limited to 3 minutes and relating to items that are not on today's agenda.
Norman Mantle Saline. I think there's 27 letters in the alphabet, and there's 2 of them that you commissioners need to pay particular attention to when you come to buying products. Everybody comes in here and wants money. The letters N and O. No, we don't need it.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the Commission for regular business. Item number 1.
Approved public forum agenda as presented.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the agenda for the public forum as presented. Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve today's agenda for the public forum. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 2.
2019 District Court budget approval with Todd Heitschmidt, Court Administrator.
Good morning, Todd.
Morning, Commissioners. Morning, Chairman. I come to you today for approval for the District Court, Saline County District Court budget. I was here a month ago, and nothing's changed from it. The budget request was $500,000, which was identical to what the budget request was last year. County budget has since passed. I have to, as a requirement for the judicial branch, have a Saline County budget, district court budget submitted to Topeka by August 27th. So that is why I'm here before you today, just asking for approval for the district court budget for Saline County in the amount of $500,000.
Questions of Mr. Heitschmidt? No questions? All right, it looks pretty detailed, Todd. Thank you for that, for the information. I would entertain a motion then.
Mr. Chair, I move we accept the 2019 District Court budget as presented. Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept the 2019 District Court budget as presented. Is there any further conversation? Questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
May I approach for your signature?
You may. All right. Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome. Move along to item number 3.
RFA 179-18, Project 18-5370, paving concrete extension, or contract extension, excuse me. Darren Fishel, Road and Bridge Administrator.
Good morning, Darren.
Good morning, Commissioners. We're here this morning to discuss and take appropriate action on a Saline County Road and Bridge Department request to extend the paving contract awarded to APAC Shears Salina Branch for the furnishing of all tools, equipment, and labor required to provide profile milling, leveling, and surface course overlay on 2 sections of roadway. The cost of the overlay on these 2 sections of road is approximately $173,725.60. These 2 sections of road are Waterwell Road from Old 81 Highway to Ohio Street, and Ohio Street from Waterwell Road going north to the Salina city limits, approximately a half a mile. This pavement has been in stress and need of repairs for several years. It is a section of roadway that is involved in the annexation lawsuit There's $100,577.11 in what is considered to be the tipping fee account. This account was created to defer some of the maintenance cost and to retire bonds for the building for a portion of Waterwell Road. We would propose zeroing out the balance of this account and pay the remainder from the 011 sub-department account for contractual asphalt that has an unencumbered balance of $334,579.60. APAC was the low bidder and awarded a paving contract for Saline County Project 18-5373 on May 1 of 2018. APAC has agreed to extend this price for extra work on the project. There is language in the contract that allows us to modify the contract that is dependent upon available funding. County Council was sought on the legality of the issue and has approved. Alternatives for action are 1. Accept proposal. 2. Direct funding from a different source or adjust percentages. 3. Reject proposal. Staff recommends accepting the proposal from APAC Shears to perform this work. The monies are available and can be scheduled to coincide with the existing contract and prices. It will extend the life of the pavement 12 to 15 years before a rebuild will be needed, and it'll correct some of the ride that the railroad tracks on Waterwell Road. The budget impact is we would take $100,577.11 from the account 440 Road and Bridge tipping fee, Waterwell, and $73,148.49 from the Road and Bridge Subdepartment 035 account. This would leave a balance of $261,431.11 in our contractual asphalt.
Okay, Darren, I noticed that in driving that road on Ohio Street, that where the city, going south from Schilling Road to the city limits, and then once you get to that half-mile mark, the road is definitely a different grade of road, I guess you would say. Will this, what you're planning on doing here, will it bring it up to the level, will it be the same type of material and so forth that the city has in that first half mile?
The city did a chip seal on their half-mile road. We're going to overlay it, so it's not the same material. This is a new pavement.
Okay, I guess that doesn't...
Better or worse than what the city has?
It'll ride better, yes.
All right, further questions of Darren?
One of the questions I have is that if by zeroing out this account from the tipping fee account, if we zero that out, it'll still be there in case we...
The account will still exist, yes.
Okay. I didn't want to close it out and then it go away, where if we start getting monies again from that tipping fee, that'll go, okay. Thank you.
Will this 2-inch overlay improve the railroad crossing on Waterwell?
Yes.
That'd be a plus. Thank you.
And again, we get back to the same old thing, that access to the businesses, because I know there's what Doug Bradley Trucking, along with the cabinet maker along there, the two primary ones, I think.
I do have assurance from the contractor that they will contact the businesses and the property owners, and during construction they will be allowed access to their properties and businesses.
Okay. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission for further questions or possible action.
Mr. Chairman, I move we sign the paving contract extension with APAC Shears, Saline, in the amount of $173,725.60 as requested by staff.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we sign the paving contract extension with APAC Shears for RFA 179-18. Further comments or questions, I would ask, do we know a time frame when we're going to do this project?
This will extend their project through the end of October, so it will be done before the end of October.
And that having been said, but there's no start?
No start date. They said more along the lines of towards the middle of September to the middle of October is kind of when they're going to be in there.
I just want to use the word caution when it comes to harvest. The middle of September is fall harvest, and And both of those roads are main arteries into the community. I don't know that, I'm assuming that that the farmers would use that road getting to the elevators on the east side of town. I don't know, but I'm just throwing the word of caution out there. So, any further comments? All right, it's been moved and seconded that I'll call for the question, excuse me. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Item number 4.
RFA 180-18, bid award for mulching attachment with Darren Fishel, Road and Bridge Administrator.
Morning again, Darren.
Again, I'd like to discuss and take appropriate action on a Saline County Road and Bridge Department request to purchase a mulcher attachment and related items for a hydraulic excavator. Sealed bids were opened on April 16th of 2018 in room 217 of the Saline County Courthouse. Bids and specifications were sent to 5 different vendors. We received 2 bids, one from Sellers Equipment for $35,259, one from Murphy Tractor for $53,800. Because of the price difference between the 2 bids, I contacted Sellers with some concerns about their equipment with the difference, and they in turn contacted the manufacturer, which is Bradco, and they offered to make an attachment to our specifications for a demonstration to possibly alleviate any concerns that we may have over the quality of their equipment, and without any expectation of purchase. They could say, if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. And so that's why there's so much lag time in this bid opening. The bids were opened right here around the middle of April, and we're just now getting it to us because they built this one and we did demonstrate it. We would like to accept the proposal from Sellers Equipment. The other alternative for action is to accept the proposal from Murphy or reject all proposals and rebid. Just a little history on this particular type of equipment. This is March of 2010. This is a Saline County excavator. It was operating a brush attachment, and it blew a hydraulic line that was next to the exhaust manifold. When the insurance adjuster came out, he looked at the machine, and this was not the first machine he had seen of this type like it. They had an issue, and when this would happen, they would burn. But one of the things I'd like you to look at in this picture is look at the road and see all the debris that's there. The equipment that we had would throw things everywhere, so it was very dangerous to work around. One of the things it would throw are those little knife cutters around that disc. The disc was becoming fatigued and cracked and dangerous, so we sold it on Purple Wave rather than try and retrofit it to another machine. So comes along 2014, we purchased a new excavator. This excavator was, when the specifications went out, part of the internals was the capability to operate this type of attachment with a few little additions later on. This is the mulcher that Bradco manufactured to our specifications. We had some work done to the excavator out of house. Because the excavator was under warranty, there was a case drain line that needed to be added, and we wanted the company with the warranty to add the case drain. So Murphy Tractor added the case drain. This was last Wednesday. This is designed to throw the chips to the ground and mulch them, so there would be no need to ever go back and have to burn them. So, very effective in that, you'd never have to come back and burn a pile. It mulches it up into chunks about that size. And from time to time, we have to cut down a tree, and we can't grub the stump out. This here also does that.
Darren, I noticed that there is some larger residue on the ground. I mean, how do you go about that? Do you just pick it
With
up?
the large residue on the ground, once you're done, you take that implement and you just rake it along the ground, and then it goes ahead and mulches up the rest of it.
And then that just stays there?
Yeah.
Well, that's a pretty impressive demonstration as far as I'm concerned. Looked like it made short order of that the issue there.
And so when you think of time and being efficient, we don't ever have to go back. I'm not going to say ever, because when you get areas like this, we cleaned these trees out of here about 5 years ago, and they were all grubbed out of the ground. And so these were the seedlings that were just 5 years old. And so, you know, it took us about 2 weeks, but I think if with an experienced operator and once they had some time, you could probably clean that whole ditch in a couple of days. And then here's another operation that we do with hedgerows is right now we side lash. We take the bucket and we rake the side of the tree, and then we have to go pick up the limbs and pile them and then go back and burn them. With this particular attachment, it'll just mulch it all right there. So once we're done, we don't have to go back. We don't have to wait for snow. And it gets us out of trying to move us away from the burn business and reduce our exposure and liability that way. So now we have the appropriate equipment to operate this type of equipment. We would like to purchase this demo unit. It was made to our specifications, and it's here. We're going into tree season, which is here in a couple months, and so it would be here and available to use. The budget impact is the 011 Road and Bridge Capital Outlay account has a current unencumbered balance of $67,657. And purchase of this equipment will leave a balance of $33,398. Now, the actual purchase price is $34,259 because of the work that we had Murphy's do in putting a case drain so we can operate this. It was part of the bid, so they took that $1,000 price they had for putting that case drain out of it. And the purchase price also includes some forestry attachments for the excavator to cover the glass in case some chip or something ever comes down and doesn't get in the operator's face, and a piece for the cab to keep things from falling on it.
Well, again, I think that that demonstration video was pretty impressive. It obviously would cut down on labor and intensive things, and in addition to the debris and safety and so on and so forth. So, that having been said, I'll open it up to the other commissioners who wish to comment.
Darren, you have an idea of the life expectancy of this?
You know, I would imagine 15 years. Now, it will take some maintenance during that time, you know, but the warranty is a year from head to toe, and then the bearings on the end were for 1,000 hours.
One of the things that I'll expand on just for a moment, it has been a long time since Saline County has done business with the homegrown Sellers Tractor Company. I'm happy to see them come back and agree to bid with us again, and happy that they could be the low bidder. And I really like to see money be able to stay in Saline County. So I want to thank the Sellers people for taking the time to demonstrate this and come up with a product and a price that'll help out Saline County as well as Sellers Tractor Company. So, that having been said, is there any further comments?
Yes, I want to thank you for inviting us out there to a demonstration and everything. It was really interesting, really cool. And what was really neat, and when you just talked about that area right there that you said that you had just done 4 or 5 years ago, then in talking with staff and everything else out there, I think it brought to my attention is that one of the things that we really need to look at as a county is that once you've got these areas cleaned out, done, and you've spent the time and the money, the efforts to clean those alleyways back out, that somehow that our weed department is able to spray these trees and keep them done instead of coming back every 4 to 5 years to do that. If there's any way to do that, to me, that's what I would like to kind of see down the road is that we're just to think 4 or 5 years ago that we spent all of that money to build that ditchway and clean that out, and we've let it get back to that area. But that's what I'd like to see is us look down the road once you've got this all cleaned back out. To how to do that. Once you've cleaned these trees out like that, you'll have to come back and redo these trees, I know. But where you've cleaned out the big ditches and stuff like that, I'd like to see that. Let's look at the other ways to help involve the weed department and help them get more involved in that too. So, but thank you, because that was a good demonstration. It was. I think it'd be a good asset to the county.
Darren, does this implement allow you to get to ground level with like those saplings that were coming up?
Yes.
And
yes.
at that point, could mowers be put in there to maintain that and keep the trees from coming back?
Not on that particular ditch. It's steep. A mower would have difficulty mowing it, but they would be able to make one wing pass on it. And the other thing, you can get down to ground level with it, but then you can go treat that stump. But typically, it'll grow back up. But we do treat them when we just cut them off. We treat them.
I think that was the crux of Jim's question was how low to the ground can it actually get?
Yeah, it'll take it below ground but.
And in talking to the sellers, the sales reps out there, it's like one of the things is like they see the teeth on them are rated for 300 hours. And depending on, of course, it depends on what type of wood it is, but some of the staff even talked about once you get into it and getting down in the sand and the rocks and stuff like that, it eats away at those life hours of those chipping teeth. So that was one of the other neat, interesting things about that also.
Ground conditions and soils are something you have to look at project to project, of course.
Or cottonwood versus hedge.
All right, I'll call for any public comment. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission for possible action.
Mr. Chairman, I move we award the bid for the mulching attachment to Sellers Equipment in the amount of $34,259.
Second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve RFA 180-18 bid award for a mulching attachment to Sellers Equipment in the amount of $34,259. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 5.
Policy 40.32, purchasing
Thank you,
with
Darren.
Andrew Manley, Assistant County Administrator, Director of Finance.
Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning, Commissioners. Before you are 3 policies. The first one is, again, the purchasing policy is in front of you again. After it was last approved in June, we identified some further areas that needed explanation or correction. The first one, we'll go to page 2. Everything that has been changed has been highlighted. The first one we'll focus on is the red. These thresholds were incorrect. I must have pulled an old file. But last November, I believe, we updated these thresholds to the 10,000 and the 15,000 from the 3,000. So I merely pulled the wrong file. So that is updating based upon the November correction. In yellow are the updates. The first one is repetitive purchases. This language was misleading in the last document. Now it reads what the intent was: repetitive purchases that are expected to exceed the certain threshold in a fiscal year must follow that higher threshold. That was the intent of the repetitive purchases, so we just kind of clarified that. Better language. That is in the level 1 and the level 2. In the asterisk, departments must receive county administrator approval for purchase requests outside of their individual department budget, regardless of the amount. So what we were running into, we run into it all the time, was sheriff would purchase something out of the CIP account. That's technically not his budget, so he would need to come to the county administrator for approval. And if it meets certain thresholds, again, if it's over $15,000, then it will come to the board as well. So we didn't have any language in there before or any type of process for those departments to purchase outside of their budget. On to page 3. The only thing that changed here was and will be signed by the chairman of the Board of County Commissioners. Originally, it just said the Board of County Commissioners will make the final award. We wanted to have the language that it will be signed by the chairman. Sole source at the bottom of the page. Sole source was there in the original. We simply just added a definition, defined it as a purchase or contract that is only one known source or that only one single supplier can fulfill the requirements. And lastly, on the local preference, we wanted to add an example of how we calculated that because there was some confusion, or there's 2 ways you can look at how you calculate what's the low bidder. We wanted to have one way so that it's clear for future people looking at this. So that is the purchasing policy updates. Are there any questions?
I like the clarification, of how we're going to do it, and this leaves no room for interpretation, as opposed to it's there and it's in black and white, and it has to be signed the appropriate manner. I like cleaning up these types of loose ends, so to speak, or that can potentially be a loose end. Yeah. So thank you very much for attention to detail. Further questions from the commissioners?
One of the things is back to this original on item 3 on the purchasing of level 1 there, when you said repetitive purchases that are expected to exceed. Is there any way that that can be mistreated by a department head about expected to? I'm thinking that kind of leaves it open out there where, oh, I didn't know it was going to be expected that I was going to have to order this 3 times this year, and all of a sudden the first bid come in at $6,000, and so they purchased it. Now, I mean, is that how we want that to read?
There's a lot of opportunities to do that sort.
Okay.
But the idea is, if that happens, we'll talk to the department head and say, just handle that individually. I don't see we'll have a big issue with it. What we're trying to go after is, paper products. If you're ordering monthly for an entire year at $1,000 increments, that adds up. That's a repetitive purchase that you're expecting. But the one-offs, we'll handle those individually.
Gotcha. Okay, that's why I keep reading this and I'm going, is that really what we want to do? But thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? Public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission for possible action.
Mr. Chairman, I move we adopt the policy name and changes as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the policy name and changes as presented in policy 40.32, purchasing. Further comments? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 6.
Policy 40.40, cellular equipment, with Andrew Manley, Assistant County Administrator, Director of Finance.
You're the star, Andrew. Let's go.
This policy is the mobile device acquisition. The next 2 policies are related to our cellular equipment and mobile devices. This one is in regards to acquisition. For all intents and purposes, both of these policies are, all of the content is basically brand new. I consider them a new policy. They did exist, 4040 and 4048 did exist before, but we've made some substantial changes, so I didn't highlight everything that changed because it would just be all be yellow. So for the mobile device acquisition, this outlines the policies and procedures for requesting a cellular device from beginning to end. The initial section under policy statement is about the justification of why an employee needs it. 1, they need to spend considerable time outside the office or away from the workstation. And 2, requires the employee to be accessible to receive and or make frequent business calls outside of the normal working hours. So that's the first part, is justification. Second is the process for requesting a cellular device. It starts with the employee and it involves a supervisor, department head, elected official, HR, administrator, and IT. So it involves the whole gang. Let's see here. Lastly, to request it, the employee has to fill out the attachment, the Appendix A, which is page 2, the mobile device use request form. What we liked about this was the employee signs off that they understand the 4048 policy, which is the next policy we're getting to, which is the acceptable use of a county device. So when the employee is requesting access to a county device or email on their phone, they must acknowledge the policy, which is something that we liked. Is there any questions on the mobile device acquisition policy?
Well, once again, Andrew, I want to compliment you on the clarity that this provides for both, not just the commission, but the employees themselves and the department heads. And it makes it very clear as to what is and is not acceptable and what they need to do to request these things. So thank you very much. Other questions from the commissioners?
My only question, Andrew, was on approving or denying this, you have either or, the HR or the county administrator?
That language was brought from the old form. Was there any intent on why that was either or is it just who's available?
It's probably who's available.
Yep.
Lines of communication, so.
Thank you.
Further questions, comments? Public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission for possible action on item number 6.
Mr. Chairman, I move we adopt the policy name and changes as presented, policy 4040.
Second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve policy number 40.40 for cellular equipment to adopt the policy name and changes as presented. And all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Move along to item number 7.
Policy 40.48, personal mobile device acceptable use policy with Andrew Manley, Assistant County Administrator, Director of Finance.
Andrew?
This policy is where all the meat and potatoes per se is at. IT and administration spent a considerable amount of time as well as a lot of input from staff on developing this policy. So the purpose of this policy is to find acceptable use standards, procedures, and restrictions for end users conducting official county business on mobile devices. This mobile device policy applies but is not limited to all devices and accompanying media, both personal and county issued, which fit the following classifications. So when we were creating this policy, we understood the unique dynamic of today's use of technology. Many employees use their personal cell phones to conduct county business. While acceptable, this created some issues with open records request and data retention. For example, texting, email on personal phones, business trips, etc. So our operations and our policies needed to capture this reality. So I'll brush over some sections that apply, or brush over some important details. You'll notice some of the sections will start out with, for example, under policy, this section applies to both county-issued cellular devices and personal devices being used to conduct county business. So when somebody is using their personal device conducting county business, this policy will extend to them. Certain sections of this policy anyway. So under policy, this entire section would apply to both. Number 3, employees must use discretion in relaying confidential and sensitive information over cellular devices. Cellular transmissions are not secure. On the second page, number 6, conducting county business on a cellular device, including voice calls, text messaging, or email, is considered to be on the clock. Non-exempt staff shall be compensated for time spent required to read or respond to an email, text messaging, or calling pursuant to the overtime policy. So when we're issuing on the previous policy, the mobile device acquisition, that is a question that we ask because if you're a non-exempt employee, we need to make sure that you have need for it, because if you're using it outside of normal working conditions, you'll be compensated with overtime. So that is a question that we'll ask employees. Are you exempt, non-exempt? Do you have a need? So, but we need to be clear with the employees that if it's not a need, they shouldn't be checking their email outside of work hours.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, then a non-exempt employee who receives a text or wishes to text to whoever in the county will then be considered as being on overtime?
That is correct. So that is the responsibility of the department head to instruct them. If they're on call, for example, then they would be responding to text messages and they would be compensated accordingly. But you have a lot of non-exempt employees that are away from their desk. For example, the appraiser's office, when they're out, working on houses or evaluating properties, having access to them away from the desk is a priority. But come 5 o'clock, the department head should be saying, okay, you're not on call, you don't need to be responding to text messages, please don't.
And, I mean, how do we monitor that? I mean, do we actually have them bring their phone in so that we can see what time they were on it, or how's that going to be monitored? And, I mean, are we going to pay them for 5 minutes worth of overtime if that's what their phone says, or what's the?
I might have to defer to HR on that question.
I see Marilyn Leamer in the house, so I guess we will let Marilyn respond.
It should be the responsibility of the department head to know what their employees are doing. I would expect many times it's probably going to be that department head or some type of supervisor that's reaching out to their employee for some reason. So, if they're signing off on approving their timesheet, they should review and see that overtime is indicated on there.
I think I would caution us to move lightly in that direction, simply because, I mean, Road and Bridge would probably have people that would need to be on call and in emergencies, but there aren't many other departments that I can think of that need to be doing that, and even a 5-minute overtime is questionable as far as I'm concerned. So something I think we probably need to be conscious of.
When we issue these devices, again, on that form they fill out, that's something that we stress with the employee is you are non-exempt or exempt, come 5 o'clock or before 8 o'clock if you're not on call. You should, and again, like Marilyn said, a lot of the requests or text messaging or emails will come from the supervisor. And the supervisor kind of dictates.
Well, and I mean, I'll use it as an example. I had an afterthought, and it's 7:30 at night. I'm going to let Larry know this, and they text him something, Now they're considered on overtime. So, I mean, that needs to be really monitored, I would think, by the department head for certain. Absolutely. And HR and administration. Absolutely. That's my 2 cents worth.
Just quick question here. Is this in pursuit to any federal, state laws, regulations that's why this is in here?
Correct.
Wow. Excuse me. Wow.
A couple questions, Andrew. First, relating back to what the chair was talking about, if Darren calls in, needs to have some signs put out because of flooding or something, so he calls up the sign crew to go out and do this. One of them's unavailable, but yet he was contacted. Is he paid overtime for just getting that notice, or is that? I mean, I don't understand all the logistics. Or if you want to tell someone that was scheduled to come in at 6, but you don't need them till 7 or 8, you want to give them the courtesy of not having to come in that early. You give them that notification. Do you have to pay them overtime to let them know that?
Once again, I will yield to Mrs.
There's
Leamer.
some allowances for the de minimis, just those very brief calls that you don't have to do it. But once you start having that conversation back and forth, if it's by email or text, or you have a lengthy phone call, then we should be paying them because you're doing it for the benefit of the employer. But in that situation where, I'm not available, call so-and-so, that's considered de minimis and wouldn't need to be compensated.
Okay. And on items number 4 and 5 on policy, I would assume that many of our employees are being contacted on their personal cells. We don't issue cell phones to. Do they have to read and sign off? I would assume, because this is past my knowledge, and I assume there's some others out there that don't know whether or not their phone meets this criteria, or are we then obligated to issue them phones because they're personal phone, or do we request them to update their equipment to meet this criteria?
I think the idea with 4 and 5 was they had a VPN connection to the mail. When they put email on their personal phone, that's when we require that their device locks after a minute. Most devices do. They'll have a password protection or the Face ID or whatever it may be. But just making phone calls, we wouldn't require that that level.
Well, I might be nitpicking this down too much too, so I'm sure there's a reason for all the verbiage that's in here.
It's good comments.
Well, I'm sorry. And just quick to that, in your response, Marilyn, is there any way to put that information that you just said, that in those instances to put that in this language? Because I'm not reading that in here, and in that way, that person cannot come and say, I got this text and I read it, so I need 5 minutes of overtime because of what you just said.
It would probably make more sense to place it in the overtime policy, and the overtime policy says you will be paid for these things. So it would make probably more sense to put it into that overtime policy. And we can certainly, discuss that de minimis type of situation.
I couldn't remember the word.
Yeah.
That's.
I'm sure at your new hires, you go over these policies with them when they're hired on, and I would assume that your department heads have periodic refreshers on policy and procedure. That
it would take for an employee to go to their supervisor to express the need for the connectivity. So, general positions, probably not. In Andrew's example of the appraisers, that's probably going to be a part of their orientation at the department level. That said, we do expect to be able to get a hold of you when you're out in the field. And so let's go ahead and do the paperwork to get you approval.
I think perhaps we might be playing the devil's advocate here a little bit in trying to create the worst-case scenario. And I think the practical sense that it probably is that common sense needs to be used in these instances. And if we see one department head or one particular employee who is constantly using this or taking advantage of the situation, that we can look at it from a common sense application and move forward from there. So nonetheless, I like the language as it's in here. We probably can't cover every single scenario that might happen somewhere along the line. So I think we're in pretty good shape, but I certainly appreciate the concerns and questions of the other commissioners also. That having been said, any other questions? Any public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission for possible action.
Mr. Chairman, I move we adopt the policy name and changes as presented.
Second the motion.
It has been moved and seconded that we adopt the policy name and changes in policy number 40-.48 for personal mobile device acceptable use policy. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thanks everyone for their input. That's the end of our regular agenda items. We'll move on to other business or announcements. I will announce that I did attend the Airport Authority last week, a meeting of the Airport Authority, and they continue to be very busy out there. Employments are advancing. There's been a new, as everyone probably knows, a low rate involved for Chicago, $89 one way. There's a lot of action. They have most of their rental spaces already rented at the airport, so it's a very active place and a very important piece of action for the city of Saline and Saline County. Any other announcements?
I will mention it wasn't on the commissioner calendar, but I will be attending the Farm Bureau meeting this evening, dinner, and also Thursday, Manhattan's KAC Regional School.
I, too, will be attending the Farm Bureau meeting this evening. Further announcements? I will take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we adjourn this meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We will take a short break and move on to meeting number 2 in the adjoining study room. We're adjourned.